Okay, let's dive right in. Imagine you're just doing your chores outside, normal day, right? And suddenly it starts raining.
Okay.
But it's not water, it's meat. Actual chunks of red meat falling from the sky onto your farm.
It sounds completely absurd, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But that's apparently exactly what people reported back in Kentucky, 1876.
Yeah, it's one of history's truly strange moments. So this deep dive, we're focusing it entirely on that weird, kind of wild incident. People call it the Kentucky meat shower.
Right. And we've gathered, a whole stack of sources, old newspaper reports, scientific write-ups from the time, some historical notes too, trying to piece it together for you.
Our mission here is to really pull out the core details, like what actually happened based on those sources.
And then explore the very strange, sometimes conflicting explanations people offered back then.
Yeah, based on what they found or thought they found. And maybe figure out why this event, still kind of captures our imagination today.
This whole deep dive is really built for you, so you can quickly grasp the key facts and honestly, some pretty fascinating, surprising insights into this historical puzzle.
So get ready. We're going to explore one of history's weirdest, maybe weather events. Let's see.
Okay, so according to those accounts from back then, the main event was, well, pretty specific.
Right, the reports nail it down. March 3rd, 1876, and it happened sometime between 11 a.m. and noon.
Only lasted for a few minutes, apparently.
But yeah, clearly long enough to make a serious impression.
And the location, too, very specific. Near Olympia Springs, that's in Bath County, Kentucky.
And this stuff, it covered an area they described as about 100 yards by 50 yards, so what's that, maybe 90 by 45 meters-ish.
Mm-hmm. And one of the main witnesses, the one you always read about in the reports, is a Mrs. Crouch, farmer's wife.
Yeah, the story goes she was just outside making soap on her porch, pretty close to the house, like 40 steps away or something.
And then it starts coming down. Can you even, picture that? Standing there, making soap, and meat starts falling.
It's unbelievable. And her first reaction, at least according to those reports,
Yeah.
she and her husband, they thought it was a sign from God.
Well, you can hardly blame them, right?
Mm.
I mean, faced with something so utterly bizarre, where else would your mind go back then?
Exactly. And this wasn't just some, local gossip either.
Oh, no.
The sources show this thing blew up. It was in the news, big time.
Yeah.
Scientific American, the New York Times, other papers too. It really became a national curiosity.
So, okay, once the initial shock maybe wore off a bit and people got curious,
Mhm.
the big question was, what was this stuff actually?
And right away, the descriptions in the reports were just all over the map.
Yeah, like what?
People were guessing everything. Beef, lamb, deer, bear meat, even horse meat. Just,
Yeah.
yeah, a real mix of possibilities falling out of the sky.
Huh. And the reports mention the size of the pieces, too.
They do. Most were apparently pretty small, like 2 by 2 inches, maybe 5 by 5 centimeters.
Okay.
But they noted at least one bigger piece, closer to 4 by 4 inches, so 10 by 10 centimeters.
Okay, so not huge chunks, but noticeable.
Definitely noticeable. And this is where the story gets even stranger. When they actually started trying to, analyze it scientifically.
Right, the attempts to figure it out just led to some really confusing results.
Hmm.
So one theory, you see this mentioned in the contemporary accounts, from a Dr. L.P. Yandel. He thought it was nostoc.
Nostoc. Okay, refresh my memory. That's a type of cyanobacteria. It looks like jelly.
Exactly. It's this stuff that can form these gelatinous blobs. And the idea was nostoc swells up massively when it gets wet.
Ah, okay.
So maybe the theory went, it was already on the ground unnoticed, and then some rain made it suddenly expand, making people think it had fallen with the rain.
Okay, but here's the snag, right?
Yeah.
Based on what other people, like Charles Fort, wrote in his notes,
Yeah.
there was apparently no rain when this happened. A clear sky, some reports said.
Ah. Well, that's a pretty big hole in the nostoc theory then, isn't it?
Seems like it. If it was nostoc, how did it suddenly appear or seem to fall without any water? It kind of falls apart there.
Yeah, it's a key detail that really challenges that specific idea.
Yeah.
And other analyses just added to the confusion. You see reports like Dr. A.K. Shaver. He identified it specifically as lung tissue.
Lung tissue, how do you jump from, bacteria goo to lung tissue? That seems like a massive leap.
It really does. It just shows how different people looking at samples, maybe even different samples, came to wildly different conclusions.
So what else did they find?
Well, there was further analysis. This was commissioned by the Scientific Association, reported by a guy named Alan McLean Hamilton,
Okay.
and his findings. Even more variety. He He said 2 samples looked like lung tissue, confirming Shaver, I guess, but then 3 were muscle and 2 were cartilage.
So definitely animal tissue and a mix of different kinds.
A definite mix. But here's the part of Hamilton's report straight from the sources that's genuinely, well, disturbing.
Uh-oh.
He stated the meat seemed to be from either a horse or a human infant.
Whoa, wait. A human infant.
Yeah. He noted the structure was, quote, almost identical in those 2 cases. Horse or infant. That detail alone is just... it's mind-bendingly weird. How is that even an option?
I don't even know what to say to that. It really shows how baffling this substance must have been. Maybe the limits of their science back then.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Or just how strange the material itself was. But yeah, horse or human infant. It just underlines the absolute bizarreness of it all.
Okay, so now we've got this shower of assorted bits, lung, muscle, cartilage, possibly from different animals, maybe even something deeply unsettling, or maybe just weird bacteria someone thought fell. The next huge question the sources grappled with was, how the heck did it get up there in the sky?
Right. How did it happen? The reports and accounts from the time definitely explored different ideas.
Like what?
Well, blood rain was a known phenomenon, sort of.
Right.
Usually dust or microorganisms tinging rain red, it got mentioned.
But again, the no rain problem.
Exactly. As we said, the lack of actual rain during the Kentucky event makes that specific blood rain idea pretty unlikely for this case.
So what else? What was the main theory?
The explanation that seemed to gain the most traction locally, the one you see pop up most often in the sources, is vulture vomit.
Vulture vomit. Seriously.
Seriously, buzzards, vultures. The idea was that a whole flock of them were flying overhead and, well, regurgitated their recent meal.
Ew. Okay, why would they do that?
Well, the reports back then actually discussed vulture behavior. Apparently, they're known to kind of disgorge themselves if, like, one in the flock starts, sort of a chain reaction.
Huh.
And also, they vomit sometimes to lighten their load really quickly if they get startled so they can escape faster.
Yeah.
Or even as a defense tactic.
Okay, so picture this. A big group of vultures had a meal nearby, maybe got spooked by something, Mrs. Crouch making soap, maybe, who knows.
Could be.
And they all just collectively barfed over that specific 100 by 50-yard patch of land.
That's pretty much the theory. A Dr. Lucy Kastenbein actually wrote about it in the Louisville Medical News. He argued it was the best fit precisely because of the variety of meat types found.
Ah, because vultures are scavengers.
Exactly. Their stomach contents would likely be a mix of whatever parts they'd managed to eat from some carcass. It explains the lung, muscle, cartilage mix, potentially.
Okay, it's gross, but it actually makes a weird kind of sense.
It does offer a somewhat plausible, if, unappetizing explanation that fits some facts.
Did Charles Fort weigh in on this? He collected weird stuff like this.
He did. Fort noted that the kind of flattened, slightly dry look of the chunks could be consistent with being, ejected under pressure, like vomiting.
Okay.
And in his typical Fortean way, he also noted this other weird thing happening nearby 9 days later, March 12th. Over London, Kentucky, supposedly red corpuscles with a vegetable appearance fell. He was always looking for patterns in strange aerial phenomena.
Okay. So the vulture theory sounds plausible. Maybe the leading candidate.
It seems to be the one most cited as the likely, or least unlikely, explanation in many sources. But, and this is important, those same sources make it really clear. There was never a definitive, universally accepted scientific answer at the time.
Right. No one could say for absolute certain, yes, it was vultures.
Exactly. So the exact cause, it ultimately remained and still remains kind of speculative, a mystery.
Okay. And it's clearly stuck around as one of those great, weird, historical question marks.
Totally. And its strange legacy is definitely not over. Get this, just recently, 2024, the Bath County History Museum actually opened an exhibit about it.
No way.
Yeah, focused just on the Kentucky meat shower. They even apparently have a preserved piece, or what's believed to be a piece, from the event on display.
Wow. That really shows how much this bizarre thing continues to fascinate people, even, almost 150 years later?
It really does.
It makes you wonder, why did these kinds of strange, unexplained moments from history stick with us so much?
I think it's because they're just such perfect examples of the truly anomalous, something that just crashes into everyday life and completely challenges our basic understanding of how the world is supposed to work.
Yeah. And when you look at this deep dive into the sources, you really see that process playing out for the people back in 1876.
Absolutely. You've got these conflicting accounts from witnesses.
Okay.
You have multiple scientific analyses reaching totally different conclusions. Is it no stock? Is it lung?
Yeah.
He's just human.
Right. And then the public debate over the theories, everything from God's intervention to, vomiting vultures.
It just highlights how incredibly difficult it must have been to try and make sense of something so genuinely weird, especially with the scientific tools and maybe the background knowledge they had back then.
So looking at this historical puzzle box, what does it tell you about how maybe we approach the unexplained or just the really bizarre even today? Are we fundamentally that different?
It's a great question. So we've taken this journey through the sources, looking at the Kentucky meat shower of 1876.
Yeah, a literal shower of meat.
Analyses identifying it as everything from bacteria to potentially human tissue.
Theories from divine signs to vulture barf.
And a mystery that genuinely lasts right down to a museum exhibit today.
So thinking about all those wildly different interpretations you find in the sources, nostoc, lung tissue, horse, human infant, vultures, God, what does this whole weird event really tell us about that basic challenge? Interpreting something completely outside our normal experience.
Especially when things like our own biases or the limits of our tools, or maybe just the sheer stunning weirdness of the event itself gets in the way.
Yeah, exactly. How much do our existing beliefs, or maybe what we expect to find, shape how we actually interpret something truly anomalous when it happens?
It's fascinating to consider. This strange little piece of history, it kind of invites us to reflect not just on what fell from that Kentucky sky,
but on how we, as people, try to make sense of the inexplicable, both back then and maybe even right now.